Hey, absolutely. All right. Good evening. My name is Mike Algio. Welcome to my YouTube channel. One of the big things with respect to my YouTube channel is what I'm helping to get out there is there's a lot of focus on people in need and people who are struggling and people who have challenges. But one of the things that aren't sought after and aren't really found, personal opinion, are those who help and those in the service of others. So, with that being said, the first interview I have on the YouTube channel, Carly Sweetman, happy to have her. It's me and Carly go way back to, I think about 2007 is when we first met. We met in the United States Marine Corps, and we've been able to maintain a friendship and a talk occasionally through almost 20 years. So, Carly, welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mike. Happy, so happy to be here.
So, it's thrilled to have you. Thank you for taking time out of my first interview. Again, this is going to be posted to my YouTube channel, and then hopefully get the word out that it's not just about the people that are struggling or having challenges. It's about them, about those individuals who go out in the community and help people. So, with that being said, that's enough of me monopolizing the conversation. So, where are you from? And tell us a little bit about what you do.
I am from upstate New York. I am a country girl, grew up surrounded by woods, and I currently still live in New York on Long Island. Very different vibes. I think that something that came to me when you were talking, Mike, is, the people who are serving. I find that the people in service are the ones who needed that themselves. So what I feel that am in the process of doing is turning my pain into purpose. I went into the military during a hard time in my young life. But I was a little older than normal, 23. And it was an escape. It was the first time.
And just for those, and I'm sorry to cut you off, Carly, only because some people who may listen to this channel or may listen to this broadcast may not be very familiar with the military and the Marine Corps in general. What would you say is the general, in your opinion, what's the general age? You mentioned you're 23. What's the general age for people going in?
It seemed like I was a few years older than everybody when I went in at the age of 23. It seemed like a lot of people went in around 18 or 19, maybe even
Okay.
20, between 18 and 20, probably.
Okay.
um, I had never been on a plane at the age of 23 before
Really?
boot camp. Yeah,
Okay.
very, very sheltered. Um, so that was the beginning of my life adventure, pulling the trigger on going into the military. I realized that I couldn't see myself with a career. I wanted freedom. And I decided, and I also wanted to help people. My grandparents were in nursing homes when I was in the military and having just terrible experiences there. And I thought, I don't want that for my parents. I always knew that I wanted to help people. I actually always felt like there was a very specific role that I was supposed to play during my young life, which I had a very, very hard time. A lot of mental and emotional struggle. So anyway, I decided I was going to be a Marine, or sorry, I was going to be a nurse, and I was going to use my GI Bill to become a nurse. And I did. And it was a whole process. I jumped out of the military and into nursing, or into my prereqs for nursing school. And I finally got this.
And were you able to do these prerequisites? Were you able to do, I'm sorry to cut you off, were you able to do these prerequisites while you were still in the Marine Corps, or did you have to wait till you got out to get all that stuff done?
I did take when we deployed, Mike and I deployed together to Iraq in 2008. I did take a couple classes then. I did CLEP a couple math classes because I had previously been a math major. And then I took a couple classes when I was home too. And I did like a few of them went into the prereqs for nursing school. But other than that, I went I got out in January and I started to do summer courses. It was the first courses they offered. So I began in the summer of 2010 with my prereqs, and then I moved to university. I was in a community college, then I moved to university. And that's what brought me to Long Island.
And which university did you go to?
Stony Brook University
Stony
on
Brook.
Long
Okay.
Island. And I've been here
Excellent.
ever since.
All right. Awesome. And
Um,
then, so how was that? So what did you do in the Marine Corps?
I was my military occupational specialty was 3043. That is supply administration, I believe. I had my hands in all the supply cookie jars. I started out as a government credit card holder and a contractor.
Okay.
And then when I went to Iraq, I did what's called the DASIF, which is like the OG supply system. And I started to do contracts there. And then I extended my enlistment for the whole year. I was only supposed to be out there the first half of the year. And in doing that, when the whole first shift left from my unit, I was the warehouse like manager or whatever. So I was
The
like
guru.
all the shipping containers. So
Yeah.
yeah, I did a little
What
bit
was
of
it?
it all.
It's just like was it just like you and me and like five other people were there for the entire year?
Yeah, I was adamant. I loved it
Yeah,
there.
it's lucky. Oh, it's fantastic. You can't beat it. I still talk to a couple of people, so hopefully they'll watch this and be able to get something out of that. So one thing, so you're in supply. You're dealing with like you mentioned, your hands are in all the cookie jars. And related to supply, you're probably doing other stuff as well. With that being said, how's that transition in the college? Are you facing a similar situation with being older than a lot of the college kids?
Absolutely. And I don't want to say I felt like I was above them by any means, but in my military experience and just doing this crazy thing, like what I tell people if they're interested in the military themselves, or if they ask me questions, that it's like playing Russian roulette with your life. And and just like seeing what happens. And so I did that, and I
Oh
felt
yeah, I get it. I get it.
I felt like I mostly benefited from it. And especially once I hit my clinical for nursing, and I was actually in the VA working with psych on a locked psych unit with veterans, and it friggin' broke my heart. But anyway, we can touch on that later. So
Good.
when I went to college, I'm a late bloomer. And I understand now why, but I didn't then. So I just accepted it, and it wasn't easy, but I felt like because, and I gave I had a public speaking class that I had to do, and I had my blues fixed up with new chevrons, which were sergeant chevrons, because I had been promoted when I had in the inactive ready reserve. And I did a
Okay.
speech in my blues on just like the discipline and how I had a lot of self-esteem issues growing up. And I just like, you get to boot camp, and they're screaming at you to climb this like wooden thing. And like, I would have never tried to do that myself. I would have never thought I could do that. But you get into this like pressure cooker, and these people are like yelling at you. You're like, shit, and you like find out what you're made of. And by, by 4 years of going through that, I was, and like this sheltered little country girl, I was just like, I can do anything. And I felt very much like I'm such a hard worker. And like if I set my sights on something, I go all in. And that's what I did for the military. And I felt like I worked so hard for them. And then when I got out and I had this like newfound freedom, because all of your freedom's gone when you're in the military, you're literally signing away. So when I had my freedom back,
Yeah.
I was like, I'm gonna do I'm going to take all this energy that I like put into being a great Marine, and I'm going to put it into my life. And it was just like, and I remember like people standing outside of classes, like complaining about this and that. And I was just like, I can do anything. And I just remember to like
Tosh, Tosh,
pish posh. And I remember too, and this came
pish
up
posh,
in
pish posh.
memory.
That's it. It's pish posh.
There's
So one of the
memory
things
that, what'd you
yeah,
say?
so you touched on a couple things I wanted to touch on. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a couple things I wanted to touch on real quick. So, and when I came to you talking about maybe the possibility of you doing this interview and kind of my expectations and my vision, one of the things when we had this conversation initially, we talked about energy, and you touched on energy really quickly. And so, how would you find it was your energy? Because you mentioned that you in the military, you're a really hard worker. Did that keep? Did that momentum?
Oh, you kind of cut out. The last thing I heard
I'm
you say
sorry
was
about that.
momentum.
Yeah, we don't have the best done. Yeah, make sure that yeah. So basically, so you mentioned energy. Did that energy keep that momentum through nursing school and into nursing?
I think it did. And I have found out very recently that I feel like I call myself like I liken myself to a freight train. Um, and I feel like that energy was driven a lot by caffeine, not in the military, but post-military. Like I feel like it's like normal college behavior is to just like hop yourself up on caffeine and like study hard and stay up all night and do
Right,
all the things, you know?
right,
And
absolutely,
so,
right there with you.
so that served me for a very long time, but something that I never knew until just the last few years is that our body can only function like that for a certain amount of time before we legit burn out. And so I feel like I was able to keep that momentum through nursing school into being a nurse for the first few years. And then my body started to just like not be able to function at that. You know, it's just not sustainable. So I think my energy was mostly like caffeinated. If that is, I hope that answers your question. If not, let me know.
No, that absolutely makes sense. And I kind of jump around a little bit. It's a any type of language. You have at it. And I want this to be an open discussion. So one thing you mentioned, which I found really, really important that you just mentioned, and I wanted to touch on it briefly. So I was in social work for a number of years. I was an alcohol and drug counselor. I was a case manager. I worked in a shelter. Blah blah blah. And so one of the things I found was if you saw me 10 years ago, I was, man, I'm gonna go out there and we're gonna save someone's life, god damn it, and we're gonna make some changes. And then 8 years, 9 years afterwards, I was like, dude, and so I was burnt out. I was literally burnt out. So my definition of burnout would be that it's something from Cicero, and Cicero was a lawyer, and he touched on the continued repetition of horrors drains even the gentlest natures of every feeling of humanity. So when we were dealing with horror, trauma, blah blah blah, it just doesn't matter anymore. What would your definition of burnout be?
I just want to say Cicero's definition of burnout gave me chills, full body
You like
chills,
that? You like that?
so
That's
much.
that. That's what I'm here for.
Very powerful. Um, my definition of burnout. I can give you, so what's coming to me right now is like the medical definition of burnout, which is essentially when your adrenals can no longer, when you don't have enough minerals in your body to fuel your adrenals, which gives you energy. And and that comes from hopping yourself up on cortisol, which happens when you drink coffee, like constantly, or do many other things. When you don't eat enough, you get a cortisol spike. And so doing that over many years will just deplete you. My experience of burnout was just severe depletion, severe anger, lack of energy, fatigue, feeling like that feeling of just like, can't, I can't do this. So I think for me, because I have such a like a constant moving mind. I always want to know the inner workings of everything. So that's why I had to answer it in two pieces. I answered it with the
Sure,
medical
please.
condition and then like how I experienced it. And um, for women, this is a very important part of my journey. So I just want to share this really quick. So for me, I was burned
Please.
out for years. Um, but then I had a child. I had my first child at 39 years old after I had been like a freight train for, she was born in 2022. I had been training for the military for at least a year before I went to boot camp. So that was 2005. So almost 20 years later, I had a kid after being nonstop, and I have to donate minerals to my child. That's what mothers do. And when I did that, my whole metabolism tanked. And so then I felt real burnout. And I am on the mend currently from that right now.
And so what would your, so for instance, one of the things that I hear, and that's people in the medical field, that's people in social services, that's people in law. I have a friend of mine, name not to be disclosed, area not to be disclosed, who's a public defender. And it's like, man, these guys just just coming in and out, and it's just like, I mean, I'm gonna just go through the motions. There's no zealously defend my client. I just want to go through the motions so I can get through my caseload. And same thing with doctors, nurses. It's like, man, I'm just trying to get this guy through. Social services, man, I just don't want to have to deal with this dude. What would you say, and especially, because people have kids, and you mentioned that you had your first kid, a little bit later than I would say a lot of people. What would your recommendation be in terms of how to overcome that, or to at least first identify that there's a problem, if that makes sense?
Yeah. I think that um, identifying there's a problem really goes hand in hand with knowing your body and being able to tell that you're really going through something. And then how do you get help? For me, I've been hyper independent to a fault that comes with complex PTSD, which I found out I had a month after I got pregnant. And so it's like this hyper vigilance, this hyper independence, and I just didn't know how to ask for support. I was kind of like programmed. I feel like we are computers, our bodies are computers, our brains are computers. And so my default programming was like, I can do everything myself. And so that leads to burnout too. You know what I mean? Not being able to ask for support. So it's like knowing yourself, being able to see yourself clearly. And that's hard when you have a lot of like complex trauma, because a lot of times that'll come with shame. And so your default will be to start shaming yourself for presenting in a certain way that is actually medically, physiologically, there's like a reason for it. But like if you can't see yourself clearly and you don't know your body, it can escape you, and it can just kind of like snowball into something completely different, you know? It can like snowball into a continuous trauma loop. Um, So I think it's really important for us to be able to see ourselves clearly, to be able to ask for support. And something that you like when you were mentioning Cicero's quote and this public defender, um, and even just these healthcare professionals, there's a woman online who she's a nurse and she's a trauma survivor. And she coined this term called cumulative caretaking trauma, where you don't have time or space in between jumping from one crisis to the next crisis to even process. And, a lot of, I can't speak for lawyers, but I know a lot of healthcare professionals are these people who want to fix people. They want to help people because they've been broken, right? Kind of like I was saying, they have like a lot of trauma. And if they don't have trauma coming into the medical system as a healthcare professional, by God, they have it after a while of being in the medical system. So I think there is this component that is just starting to be talked about, just like trauma, the aspect of trauma, of like emotional trauma, is starting to kind of bubble up more in mainstream. And so I think there's this aspect of like years and years and years of just dealing with these things and not having time to process it that is also draining us, and no one's really acknowledging it. There's no system acknowledging it. So that's affecting us, but it's really great for us to have these vocabulary words, like these pictures and these names now, and just these people coming out and speaking of their experience. I think it's a really friggin' tough time in the world, but I think this is a really epic time to be alive, because I think this is the beginning of the end of so much oppression and trauma that we've all been living with and within.
You know, there's I used to work at a place, again, I won't mention the name of it. There was this big sign in the called the bullpen, really enclosed, really small enclosed area. And it said you have to treat everybody as if they've experienced trauma today. And I'm like, okay, so you do your best with that. But then you would ask for a day off, like, hey, I need a mental health day. Now, if you said that I was sick, then it's like, all right, well, there's nothing they can do about that. It's the law, and they can't go into, well, why are you sick? What's the matter? Well, I'm sick. But if you said, well, I need a mental health day, that would get shot down really quickly. Well, we can't give you up for the day. And so one of the things that you mentioned, which I really want to go into, albeit briefly, but I really want to go into it, I think it's important, is that all this, you're hopping from one emergency to the other, and everything is vital for folks, and whether it be social services, whether it be in the law, whether it be in, going to a healthcare provider, everything's an emergency. And I want it done yesterday. And so, but that doesn't give you the time to be able to decompress. Well, I just had a guy die, and that was my thing. I was the first responder to 2 overdoses, and despite my best efforts, I was unsuccessful in helping them come back. And there was no, for me, well, I wish I'd done this or I wish I'd done that. I know I'd done pretty well, but still a fucking shitty situation to have a guy die in your arms. And it's like, well, I'm sorry you're dealing with that. If you need a day off, it's okay, but you're gonna still be able to come in next week, right? That's a tough thing to have to, like. It's like, yeah, I guess, yeah, fuck it, why not? I got bills to pay. And then that stuff just gets compressed more and more. And so you just touched on a lot of great stuff that I think it's pertinent, because we do lose track of that. We do lose track that the people that are providing these services are people, and you have no idea what they dealt with previously to meeting you.
I think what came up when you said that is also the fact that, speaking as a medical professional, speaking as a military veteran, speaking as a rebellious country girl with not much to do where I grew up, substance abuse became the way that I coped with hard things. And every college we're all binge drinking, you know, military, we're all binge drinking, healthcare
We're all binge
professionals, what
drinking.
do? We go drink after work. You know, it's this thing. And so when you learn that coping, first of all, when you don't have any knowledge about how your body works or processes energy, um, and then you learn to cope. So you're not taught like, oh, well, it would be great to meditate for a little while, or oh, it would be good to like go take some deep breaths and sit in a quiet place where you don't have a ton of stimulation. When you're coping with a substance, what's happening is you are not like you're retaining all your stuff. You're literally just numbing it, shoving it deeper inside, and then just numbing it and kind of like dissociating from it. And then you just wake up and go again, you know? And so that is another thing that I think is so tied to like this aspect of like trauma building up, like the cumulative caretaking trauma, and just like even piling on childhood trauma, right? But like the way that we're dealing with it. If I was going home from my nursing job at the hospital where I was treating 5 to 7 patients a shift and all of their family members, you know, with a couple hours to drive home, eat dinner, and then go to sleep and wake up again, if I was meditating in that time, I feel like I could have processed some stuff, but I'm drinking. You know, I'm drinking to calm my nervous system so that I can go to sleep, so that I can wake up again and start all over. And so that just like
You know,
it it causes it, it's like hand in hand, it's like a horrible combination, and it just keeps the ball rolling, you know?
it's that vicious cycle of, and then, so for instance, one of the things that I found in the military, and I'm sure you saw this as well, is you go on a what do they call it? There's little, not deployments, but you go on detachments, a
TAB,
2 week deal, the Yuma, or
TAB.
yeah, like yeah, the whole unit. No, yeah, it's like the whole unit goes out there to a detachment in 29 Palms, or El
I
Centro, or
forget.
one of those little, yeah. And you get there and everybody's like lining up to do shots and drink. And it's like, guys, we're just in El Centro, or we're just in Yuma. We got to be up at 05 to go report in. And these kids, I was in a we were in a air wing unit, and so you have 19-year-old kids who have to give the thumbs up to a bird, and they're doing shots the night before, and so it's like, holy shit. And it's like the same, and the same deal with pilots. I know they're officers and gentlemen and ladies and all that kind of good deal, but you see them getting shit faced too, and it's like, holy fuck. And so the point being is that, what would you say to, that's just the way it is. Like, so for instance, there's a lot of, what do I want to say? There's a lot of peer pressure in the military because a lot of people are younger, not a lot of life experience. But in terms of where we're at now, in terms of older adults, people with lived experiences, what would you say to people facing that peer pressure? Oh, Carly, come on, come have a drink with us. Instead of meditating or instead of going to the gym, Mike, come drink with us. What would you say in terms of people who have to deal with peer pressure with respect to that?
I think that it has everything to do with that person's identity. How strong is that person's identity? You know, are they this programmed people pleaser that is seeking their identity from the perception of others, in which case they're going to want to go and drink, because then they're going to get that perception back of like, oh, I'm did the right thing, I'm in the cool group, you know. As I've aged, as I've broken this shit down in my own body and programming, you know, there's so many instances that I said yes when I really wanted to say no. And too many, a ridiculous, devastating amount of times, you know. And that's in my experience, an unlayering that you just have to kind of keep, you know, like build your discernment and all of that. And there was something else that I wanted to say, but I forgot now, but I felt like it tied in. You had asked, so I brought in the substance abuse, and
Mhm.
yeah, I can't remember now. It's the, oh,
No, it will come when just stop me when it comes to you, and not a
okay.
problem. And it's one of those things I found as well that for me, I don't like to talk about other people, especially if they're not in a position to be able to respond. But for me, I dealt with a lot of shit very, very poorly. Here I am, I'm giving life advice to people with DUIs, I'm getting shit faced. I'm not necessarily driving because I'd heard horror stories all day long of people getting pulled over a block away from the house, or I'm engaging in risky sexual behaviors. I'm engaging in things that are outside of my norm, but these are my coping mechanisms. And I would even say to myself, well, it's time to get shit faced. It's time to get laid. It's time just to get my mind away from all the shit that just happened. And now, I'm not trying to sound like I'm this perfect guy, by no means. But at the same time, one of the things I do now is I go hit the gym. I go for a little jog. I actually meditate and I think about my energies. And one of the things that you mentioned a lot of times are energies. And when we touched on it briefly at the beginning, if you talked to me like 5 years ago, I'm like, the energy is bullshit. It's like blah, blah, blah. But as I got a little bit older and debatable whether I got wiser or not, I started going through aspects of the importance of breathing, of yoga. And I'm like, holy shit, this shit is real. And in terms of karmic debt and energy, that stuff is real. And if you put bad energy out there, or if you expose yourself to bad energy, it's you're not gonna get anything back. So for instance, you mentioned energy a lot. So from your perspective, you can get the medical perspective, you can get the Carly perspective. What do you mean by energy per se?
I feel like it's not that most people can't argue that at least at one point in their life, they've been able to walk into a room or walk into a place um, where they could feel something, whether even they were in a car and they had their right blinker on and there was a feeling, and then they were like, oh, I think I need to go left. And then they find out there was an accident. Energy, it's palpable. I believe it's our first language. I just created and birthed a little baby human animal. Like we are animals. Like it is never more solidified to me that we are animals until I literally just like held my little baby girl every friggin' second of every day. She would not let me put her down, and breastfed her and just watched her go from this like tiny creature that couldn't do anything to now a 2-year-old. Um, so I think our first language is energy. Um, and I I think that, or what I've learned is that when we don't know that a feeling that we have is just energy. Emotions are energy in motion. So when we get struck with a feeling, something that we've been taught was bad, we don't want we don't want to deal with it.
A gut feeling. A gut feeling.
I
Is
would
that
say,
what you like?
yeah, like a gut feeling, but even like, um, so for me personally, like I've struggled with holding a lot of hopelessness, with this aspect of hopelessness coming in my life over and over and over. And I used to attach to it, and I'd be like, I am hopeless. What's wrong with me? I'm depressed. I'm broke. What's wrong with me? But it's like those are actually just sensations. Those are just waves of energy coming through. So when you understand it from that perspective, you're not attached to it, you're not broken anymore, and you can kind of just like sit with that and get curious about it instead of like attaching and like solidifying something, you know, that isn't even real. Like we're making it all up, you know? So I think that that is just like, imagine growing up and having that basic knowledge. Um, what trauma is, what emotional trauma is just trapped energy in the body. So when we're using substances or coping with shopping or scrolling or being addicted to TV or eating, all of those things, we're not moving our body. We're just in a stagnance and we're just literally like numbing out. We're trying to not feel our body. But when we do the things like you said, Mike, like yoga, breathing, you can change your whole like physical, or like you can change your whole energy by breathing differently. If you change your breath, you can change your energy. um you know, if you move your body, your energy shifts. If you go work out, you're processing, you're moving this stagnance out of your body, instead of just like lifting your hand and chugging beers and it's like nothing's moving, everything's staying. And then we're like intaking toxins that are just going to eventually solidify disease within our body, you know?
Yeah, there's a couple things that you mentioned I think are really, really important. And it touches on, again, I don't like to touch on anybody else, just for myself. A lot of things that you said really resonate with me. I went through a pretty significant breakup at one point in my life, and after I felt really stupid. And how did I cope with that? I coped with it by drinking, looking at pictures of her, which I shouldn't have been doing, which just added to the stress, or looking at pictures of her and me rather, and that added to the stress. And then getting drunk, and then now it's time for me to get laid, and now or I can't get laid, so now time for me to watch pornography where I can engage in that, and then live in this fantasy, and I can go bye bye. I can go bye bye for 2 hours, 3 hours, by living in this drunken ethereal state of any sexual fetish that I, would think of pornography is, not to get off to a subject, is that any 13-year-old boy, any 14-year-old boy has seen more naked women on the internet than the richest king of yesteryear. And then you have all that access to it. And then, well, it's legal. So it's, drinking's legal, pornography's legal. So it's fine. And then what ends up happening is all that bad energy, like you mentioned, you wake up, or at least I woke up feeling ashamed because I spent all this money. Now I'm afraid to look at my credit card statement because, how much money I spent. I think we've all had those days, but it was a consistent feeling of like, oh, I'm not really sure how this is going to turn out. And then feeling really nervous, and then feeling the shame of, well, I was into all this stuff. And one of the things that I realized for me that was helpful is that when you have something to be proud of, there is no shame. And that pleasure is so much longer lasting. Like, so for instance, I wanted to make sure I had time to pontificate on some of the questions, and give about 2 hours thought into how this interview would go and the direction, and how to distribute it on the internet, and then how to be able to market it get the message out there. And I felt really proud that, I'm going to go for a jog. I don't have a lot of time, but I'm going to make sure I make time, feel refreshed. I go for a little jog, stretch my legs. And that's something to be proud of. And that's a long-lasting ethereal effect. Even I'm feeling it now. I'm feeling that energy that, I guess you could say medically, I'm feeling the endorphins. They're still resonating within my body. But these pleasures that are short-term bring about a lot of shame. And I mean, it's a lot of things that you're saying really resonate with me, as, there's aspects of energy and how you're going to feel afterwards, depending upon how you use your time and your energy to be able to get through the challenges that you faced.
Yeah. And I think,
Absolutely. So it's really important.
go.
Please. No, you go. I know we have a little bit of delay. Go ahead.
I was just going to say about discipline, being in the military requires a lot of discipline. Going through nursing school requires a lot of discipline. However, what I have struggled with in my life is discipline when it comes to these negative coping patterns and my inability to tap into the discipline it required to stay out of them. I could stay out of them for a certain amount of time and then I would drop back in. And what I have learned is that not only what you're saying, Mike, is true, that, you know, when you're doing something positive for yourself, you're not left with that like shame hangover that essentially feeds the trauma, right? It makes you want to keep coping in the negative ways, because you're a piece of garbage for doing that, you know? Um, but
Absolutely, 100%.
but it's like this
No,
discipline,
I get it, because it's absolutely important what you're saying. Yeah.
but the discipline that you build by actually saying like, I'm not going to smoke cigarettes anymore. And then you actually do that, or I'm not going to drink my feelings anymore. And you actually do that. That is like such a self-esteem builder. And that is how you learn how to trust yourself, you know? So I feel like it also has to do with like self-trust. Um, and it's just there's so many layers, you know, of just like for the human condition, the complexity that I see the human condition in like blows my mind every day. I just feel like there's so many layers of like, take any topic and you can just like dissect so much from it, you know?
So for instance, I wasn't able to change, and I would say this is pretty fair for other people as well, or a fair statement for other people as well, but I wasn't able to change till I was ready. And that process, I mean, depending upon who you ask, I mean, that process could have been a couple of years, it could have been 20 years. I don't know, it depends on who you ask. But for me, I take it from life was pretty good. Then I was in this relationship and the relationship deteriorated. And then my other relationships deteriorated almost as a result. And then I went through this, I like to euphemistically call it my situation. And I went through this situation where I got involved in drugs, used very, very, very poor coping mechanisms. I went to went to the hospital once. I had a psychiatrist prescribe me Prozac, which taking Prozac for the first time, there was a lot of shame involved with that. I struggled with thoughts of suicide. And I think these are important things to mention, especially you and me being veterans, is that I don't know if this should be a fair statement for you, but there's no veteran that I know who doesn't know someone who's killed himself. I don't know if I've said that in a way that makes sense and that you would agree with. And so I thought I'm going to be one of these guys who are going to, do this. And I've shared that with people, and it's like, Mike, that's so uncharacteristic of you. And so I guess the point where the question mark is how do you become ready, or how do you help somebody get more ready before the impact becomes more profound?
Before I answer that, something I want to say about to go back to the cumulative caretaking trauma, because I remember this component, is that because you were talking about like, I want to help these people and I want to do this and I want to do that. And that's how I felt as a new nurse too. And then when you said I couldn't change until I was ready, that's like, we can't force help on anybody. So as a healthcare provider, I had to learn the hard way. I began being a nurse with this like chip on my shoulder that like, I'm going to change the world and all these things. And I got a really intense dose of, over the years, right? A really intense like reality check of like, no, like if they're receptive, then you can help them. But like, I was like holding this responsibility of like, I need to help these people. And it was just so unhealthy. So I just think that it is very important to acknowledge that like nobody can change unless they decide, unless it is a decision from them. And so the biggest thing that I've learned, I became a trauma-informed breath work facilitator in 2021. And the biggest thing that I learned about being trauma-informed or trauma in general is that you want consent. You want to ask somebody's consent, even in a relationship. Like if I have something heavy that I want to talk about with my partner, I'm not going to just like throw that out there. I'm going to say, hey, I have something that it feels really heavy. I'd really like to communicate it. Is now a good time? And then if they say no, okay, well, I'd like it to be in the next few days if possible. Let me know when there's a good time, right? It's like, it's this aspect of consent. And I feel like just approaching somebody with that, because that is energy too. People can feel that in your energy. Our nervous system, the state of our nervous system is like the energy that we give to people. And that's like people can sense that on when you're on Instagram doing reels, they can sense this like, what is the energy behind that? You know, what is the energy behind me wanting to help this person? Is it that I need to do it for my self-worth? Or is it that I'm genuinely interested in helping them, but I would never want to pressure them to do something that they're not ready to do? And so I think it is the starting point is to of making yourself approachable, of being trauma informed, of allowing of being able to have people even open up to you, is this feeling of like you're not in their field. It's like, I'm here, I'm sovereign, I'm in my own energy, and I feel great about that. I'd love to help you. Are you interested? No? Okay, I wish you the best. There's no personal attachment, there's no expectation. It's just, so I hope that answers your question.
No, so for those who might watch this who may not necessarily know trauma informed care, and congratulations on again yet another accomplishment that you have as far as breath coordination. But what would you say is trauma informed care?
Trauma-informed care is consensual care. Trauma-informed care cannot be, you have to have informed consent. And so a very large thing that like kind of blew my mind, I guess, before I even became trauma-informed, is that I started to realize that the system that I worked for, the career that I was so excited to have, is based on trauma. And then as I started to look around, I started to realize like, oh, the world is based on trauma. So I kind of feel like I lost your question, but I know you want to say something. So maybe
No, but I hear what you're saying. It's one of those things that I just wanted to touch on. So, for instance, and I can't speak nursing or healthcare profession, but with social services, and I'm not deriding anybody because there's a lot of people out there who are doing a lot of good. Outreach workers are out there right now, the dead of night, trying to talk to people. But some of these CEOs, for instance, are making, I won't say the companies or the organizations, they're pulling like 300, 400 grand a year as far as CEOs. And so there, for me, from an outsider looking in, there's not a lot of incentive. And it's like, oh, we just need a few more dollars. Just need a few more dollars. We're almost quick to be able to get this thing. Well, when's the last time you were in LA?
long time ago.
A long time ago.
Like
So it's gotten worse. So it's gotten worse. And then if you come to San Diego, we have our, albeit smaller, it's gotten worse. And so with that being said, but there's so much money being thrown out that at this problem, but it's gotten worse. And so it seems like for me, from what I'm hearing from you, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but what I'm hearing from you is that the system based on trauma, there's not a lot of incentive for people to get better. I don't know if that if I'm putting words in your mouth or if that's something you would disagree with.
I do feel that there's not a lot of incentive for people to get better. Um, but I also feel like because I believe that our school systems are founded on trauma, I feel like I don't know how to word this.
And we can always circle back to it.
It's just perpetuating. It's not even that there's not an incentive to get better. I don't feel that what is being peddled to the mainstream is an actual solution. I feel like it is something that is a money-making tactic that is being sold to us as the norm and what should be and what has always been since we've been alive. And it's just perpetuating more and more trauma. And so one of the things, like when I worked in the hospital, these people, especially elderly people, when you take them out of their natural element, whether or not they have a diagnosis of dementia, they are cognitively disturbed and just, ungrounded for a while. Then they're sick. Their body is doing stuff that they don't know what the hell's going on. So now they're scared. And you will have 100 or more medical professionals come in and out of that room on a daily basis. And like, they don't know who they are. They don't know what they're doing there, the majority of the time. And it's just, and even for me, something that I literally could not, I left the hospital because I could not hang with this shit. And I shamed myself for it. Like, oh, why can't I be like the other nurses, blah, blah, blah. I could not look my patient in the eyes unless I decided that I was going to stay later to document. Because as a healthcare professional, this administrative background that I had served me so well because I'm there to document. I'm there to give meds. I'm there to put in catheters or do wound care or whatever intervention is available that's necessary, put in an IV, and then I'm there to document. And that's it. And so if I want to acknowledge the humanity of the person who's in that bed going through these things, if I want to create a safe space for them, which I maybe wasn't when I wasn't trauma informed, like to a degree, right? I had the best intentions at heart, but I just wanted to give them my presence, which is what we need. We need that to heal. We need that to grow. We need that to feel safe. Like I had to literally subtract my own personal time to do that. And it broke my heart. And then I went into another aspect of nursing and it was the same. And then I just said, like, I'm dying. I just can't do that as a person because I was very humanity-based going into it. And I felt very much like I wanted to help people. So when I started to see that that number one, I couldn't look them in the eyes, that pissed me off. That really bothered me. But then I started to see that, like, oh, nobody's getting better. Everyone's getting worse. And there's just more meds and there's just more prescriptions. And I'm with these people in the community in their homes, having relationships with them for years, watching them age, watching them die in certain cases. And like, I make a call to a doctor and it's just like another med. And then I come and see them and they're like, oh, I'm still having the same problem. And then I call the doctor and I'm like, oh, you can try this med or like, but then they kind of like make it out like it's the patient's fault. Like, it's like the patient's mental, maybe it's psychosomatic, like it was just, I don't think any of it's helping. So it's like, I think people want to get better, but now we're just at a place where I think a lot of people are realizing like, ooh, medical stuff is a business. And like, I'm a little bit more hesitant to like trust everything for that. And I feel like they want to be like, oh, this, I heard about this, like, let me try this. But insurance isn't covering any of these alternative modalities, these things that are hitting us from an energetic perspective, right? Like the medical system acknowledges energy when they read your brain waves and when they read your heart waves. And when they do plastic surgery on you and they stick a frequency device in to tighten your skin and your tissue, that's how the medical system acknowledges energy. But like, where's all the other stuff? Where's the energetic component of the mental health issues and the emotional health issues? Like, where's the energy when it like actually comes to our benefit, like, so long-winded, but
No, it's okay. Where you, I know what's one of the things I want to touch on is when I was on Prozac. I was on Prozac for about 3 or 4 months, and I remember saying something along the lines to my psychiatrist. And it took about, I was on a 6 month waiting list for therapy, and so but there's plenty no wait list for medication. I mentioned to my psychiatrist I was still having challenges. She's like, just take a guess. What do you think she said? Well, obviously we need to up the dosage. And it's like, oh, that sounds like a great idea. And so then I was at a point where I wasn't drinking, I wasn't engaging in illicit sexual behaviors, but at the same time I was feeling so just lack of joy that I could have the best steak dinner, I could be on the best roller coaster, I could be jumping out of planes, which I still do, and I would just jump and it's like, okay, no, cool. And then I just felt very lackluster in life. And so one of the things I decided on my own, and this is not like what a great guy I am. This is just because I didn't want to live my life that way. I stopped. And then I focused more on all the positive things and things to be proud of. So tell us a little bit more about so that you had that challenge and that perspective. You mentioned as far as the patient care or really lack thereof, if you would say. So where are you at now with respect to healthcare?
I am currently straddling the line between being in the system and being out of the system. In order to financially survive, I still use my nursing license. So I essentially made a rule that I would not ever work for a corporate medical entity again, which is where I was working for my first 2 nursing jobs. It was within the same healthcare system, which is another way of saying corporate healthcare. So I decided that I would never, I would go bankrupt before I sold my energy back to something like that. But I currently have 2 private nursing positions that I feel very aligned with. So I do that. I go and I still get to see elderly people in their homes, which is just like,
That's fantastic.
it brings me home. I love it so much. So I do that very minimally. And then I also work as a circulation nurse for a plastic surgeon. And it's so against like who I am. Like plastic surgery in and of itself is not aligned with who I am as a person. However, the way the job came to me and all these different aspects of the job, it feels like it's really where I'm supposed to be. I find it very interesting. I am obsessed with the body. And so the fact that I get to witness the body and see these like internal aspects of it and, just different things, I feel like I'm supposed to be there for some reason. So that's what I do in the healthcare system as of now. With my own health, I will not seek care aside from getting lab tests done, or, diagnostic tests through the healthcare system. I did have my baby in the system. I did not want to, but I didn't have a choice, because of financial reasons. So I was able to get a midwife with my
Sure.
veterans benefits, and that was lovely. And
That's awesome.
I had very minimal intervention for my pregnancy. I felt very much like my pregnancy was an opportunity for me to take my power back while being kind of like because of my own life circumstances, kind of forced back into the system, because I had already been like, I'm never going back. And then I get pregnant. I'm like, shit, like I don't know how to manage this. Like I need
Just
help.
when I think I'm out, they drag me back in. They
So
drag me back in.
so I like went my first visit to the friggin' midwives. I was like sobbing because I had to like go back into a medical office, and I was just like, I can't believe this is happening to me, you know? But the end result, I believe it was for me to like fully grab my power back.
Real quick, tell us what I have a basic idea. My understanding of a midwife is somebody who at your home delivers the baby. Is that correct? You want to touch on that a little bit?
At the home or in the hospital.
Okay.
And a midwife is an advanced practice nurse,
Okay.
whereas what do they call it? Gynecologist, OBGYN, obstetrics and
Yeah.
gynecologists. They are medical doctors and surgeons. I think the obstetrics is a surgeon. I don't know the details, but they're definitely medical doctors. Midwives are advanced practice nurses. Nursing is in and of itself more holistic in comparison to like the education for a doctor.
Sure.
And they are there to like, they're going to listen more. They're going to listen to what you want more. They're going to do more natural things. They're going to allow more natural things. Whereas medical doctors have a history of being like extremely pushy and not really listening as well.
Sure. In and
So
out.
I
In and
chose,
out.
yeah, that's why I chose the
Yeah.
midwives, and I would do it again over and over and over. It was an amazing decision. I'm so grateful that I had that option. Yeah.
Fantastic. What would you say to, so one of the things that I was very I think I mentioned it earlier. I was very dismissive in terms of energy. That's fucking bullshit. That's hippie shit. And then when I got a little bit older, a little bit wiser, debatable whether I was wiser or not, but really came to being that for me was very true. And you mentioned a lot about the energy, but if people really, if anybody watching this would really disagree with aspects of energy, what would you tell them? Or the importance of energy with respect to health?
Mm. I wouldn't want to importance of energy and respect to health. I think I would encourage a person to feel their own energy, and there's different ways to do that. But just like putting your hand on your heart, and for women, they always have you put your hand on your womb and your heart. But just like, quieting yourself and feeling that, or even like rubbing your hands together and then kind of separating them and holding them for a period of time, like you're going to feel that. So I feel like if I got in a debate with somebody in real life scenario and they didn't believe in energy, I would just like let them not. Like I do, because I don't
Sure.
want to burn my energy trying to convince somebody of something that they don't want to believe, right?
Yeah, it's not going to be like one thing I've discovered as I've gotten older. It's not going to be like, Mike explained it all to me. Mike took 10 minutes to explain it all to me. So all these beliefs I've held my entire life, now I get it. Now that Mike's taken 10 minutes out of his time to explain it to me, now I get it. And it's absolutely, it's one of those things. I think it's absolutely important. And so you mentioned a lot of things not being covered. With your perspective of healthcare in the future, do you see that changing with respect to more holistic visions for healthcare as opposed to, I want to say the party line of, meds?
I feel like insurance is extremely corrupt. The way that insurance companies operate are extremely corrupt. I would love to see, and I do believe that there is a place of a life-saving physical trauma place for the existing system that that many of us have been taught to let manage our entire aspect of our, like all of our health. I feel like, you know, if I got in a car accident, I'd go to a hospital. And if my, you know, if my arm came off, I'd go and I'd have surgery to put my arm back on. Like there's a place, as much as I'm not, you know, as much as I'm not involving it in my health on an everyday basis, like there's a place. But I would love to see an integration of, you know, the whole holistic aspects of this energy healing and this, you know, nervous system. The nervous system component is the energetic component, and that is just not considered. It's just not taken into consideration. And then I just, you know, I just took this course on learning how to interpret hair tissue mineral analysis tests, and I learned so many other things about just environmental toxicities and things also that it doesn't seem that the medical system has knowledge of, or like that they're educating their professionals on. So I don't know that I would want insurance involved. I I wish I had like a better, like I wish I actually had a vision, because I do believe that we, you know, like the more collectively, there's like a collective consciousness that, in my opinion, in my belief system, that the more people believe something, the more it's true, right? But like I feel like collectively, as we break down this shit individually and we start to have talks like this online and come together and expand our consciousness, we could envision and hold the vision of just something so much better. And I don't know specifics of what that would look like, but what I just hope so deeply to see in my own lifetime, in my daughter's lifetime, is this aspect of integrative care, where it doesn't all have to be prescription medications. You know, there's homeopathic remedies, which are actually energetic frequencies that can be ingested, that can adjust. The first energy, or the first medicine was like that. There was energy medicine, was like, I think it was like in the 20s or something like that. And they totally just like threw it out, you know, in like, in my opinion, for financial benefit, for greed, and capitalism and all of the things. So I think that I would love to see, my name is Rebellious Nurse. My business name is Rebellious Nurse, and I am here to be bold and brave. And what I would love to see is people like standing up for themselves and being like, this isn't good enough. Like, this care is not based in humanity. This care that is being given to us for free because we're paying insurance, it's not taking our humanity into consideration. And so how do you help a species, a human species, if you are not considering their humanity? And so not only do I want to see integrated health, I want to see humane health care, you know? Like, I want to see something that is actually like, oh, this is happening. Like, let's not just mask it with some medication that you're going to now take for the rest of your life that's going to cause all these side effects, and you're going to have to take more medication, la, 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 la. Let's actually try to get to the root.
Exactly.
You know? So I think
yeah, it's one of those things too. It's
humane.
Yeah, for me, it was one of those, Hippocrates said something along the lines of walking is the best medicine. And so as I've gotten older, my knees have gotten worse. I can't run like I used to, but I can walk pretty well. I can walk for long distances. And you know, you do the mountain thing, the mountain trekking thing, and which has been great. But one of the things that ultimately is I'm ultimately responsible for my own health. And I hope more people, before they get, as you referred to it, as a system, before they get to that point and before they have to explore other holistic alternatives, that there are things out there in terms of taking care of yourself. And I wish more people were a little bit more proactive and take care of themselves and just to be able to avoid it in its entirety. But that's just my perspective.
That is my perspective. We create our health by empowering ourselves. And what would this world look like instead of shoving made up history in our brains and all this bullshit mathematics that they had to change to la 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 la? What would it look like if we were taught about our health from a young age? What would it look like if we all went into college knowing our body only has a certain amount of time for us to party and cope this way before it's going to shut down? So like, let me like try and live a little bit better. You know, there's so much basic knowledge that we do not have about our bodies, and it seems to me like it's on purpose, you know? And so when I see the like the public, when I go and visit people, or when I have these plastic surgery patients, like there is no judgment for any of these people not
Sure.
doing or doing anything that they're doing, or because none of us know. None of us know. And if you want to do a Google search on it, you're not going to find that much. You're going to find all the medical sites first, and you're going to have to friggin' go to like DuckDuckGo or whatever it's called, or like Firefox, and you're still going to, you're still not going to find it all. So it's, it's this, like the fact that we have a literal pandemic and we do not have people on TV. We're locked in our homes and we don't have people on TV telling us how to use food to boost our immune system. What are we doing?
You know,
What are we doing?
there's one thing I wanted to touch on real quickly because I thought it was important is, and I find that really commendable, and I totally 100% believe it because it's so, I can sense the realism is that there is no judgment from your perspective, and as a healthcare provider, you're not judging people because people don't know. And it wasn't until I'm 42 now, I'll be 43 in a few months, or actually next month rather. And it wasn't until last year I discovered aspects of my macros, and in terms of, well, this is only 300 calories. That's cool. Well, I'm not looking at sodium, all the other shit that and it's doing all who knows what to my body, but it's only 300 calories, so it's good, right? And so it's one of those things. I think it's really important. You touch on something that was really important in terms of not being judgmental because people don't know, and then ultimately with that ignorance, and ignorance I think has a negative connotation to it, oh, he's just ignorant about um, this or that. And I think it's used mostly as aspect of racism, but ignorance can be about not knowing about food, not knowing the aspects of food, what it can do for you. And so what ends up happening is, like when you're in the pandemic, is you're eating shit that you don't know what it is. You ain't only got anybody telling you about it. You can have it delivered to your house. You're not exercising. You're gaining weight, and then it goes back to what we had talked about earlier in that shame. And then once it's happening, you go back to those comforting aspects of food and whatever your comfort is to absolve yourself of that shame. So I think it was really important what you touched on.
I was so it was so crazy to feel this way as a healthcare professional, especially in the state of New York during this whole thing. Like it was, and a veteran and somebody who deployed for the freedom of this country, right? And I just I got so pissed because it's like, you're telling people who don't want to put this experimental cocktail in their body in a free country that we're irresponsible. And yet you're giving us zero opportunities to take any natural responsibility for our own health. You're literally telling us not to breathe air. Like,
You know, I remember when I took the vaccine, and I respect anybody's. I mean, I'm with you. I'm in terms of if people who took the vaccine didn't take the vaccine. When I took the vaccine, I was like, all right, well, I'm doing the responsible thing for humanity and for us to get back on track. And I will shit you not. A week later, no, maybe like 3 or 4 days later, I was incapacitated in bed. I could literally not. I literally could not get out of bed. I was basically shitting, not to make it all, not to gross anybody out, but it's just the truth. Is I would have a bucket and I'd shit in the bucket in bed because I literally couldn't drag myself. I couldn't even drag myself to the bathroom. And so the point of all that being is I still got COVID. People who had I won't say the audacity, came from a good place, but I had people tell me, well, it could have been worse. You could have died. And it's just like, I still caught COVID. I still thought I was going to die. So it's like, the only difference was I got really, really sick when I got the vaccine. So the point being is that, again, I'm with you that you have these aspects of freedom. We have these beliefs that we believe in, we even fought for, and then it happens, and it's like, well, you want to keep your job, you want to be able to travel anywhere, you better be willing to inject this experimental shit into your body.
Yep. I was blacklisted from my career.
Yeah.
I did nothing wrong. I was a
So,
hero for being a veteran.
so
I was a hero for being a healthcare professional.
So
and I was screwed because I chose the path of freedom with no judgment. Go. I'm done.
So you went from hero, war veteran, nurse to zero.
I mean, but they were still calling me. I was I was a hero, but I just couldn't go and work in my career path because I chose the path of freedom, which I literally spent a year of my life in the country of Iraq fighting for.
Freedom.
What?
Fighting for freedom. It's one of those things that I know a lot of people got discharged from the military as a result of not taking the vaccine, and there was people invited to come back, but a lot of people, the vast majority, did not because of how they were treated. And it's amazing how one of the things I wanted to touch on real quickly, and we can start wrapping up, is for those who don't feel appreciated, whether it be healthcare, whether it be the law, whether it be social work. I can't speak into healthcare, but I can speak a little bit about the law, and I can speak a lot about social work. And for those who don't feel appreciated, what would a final message for those people be?
We have to learn how to appreciate ourselves. We have to become our biggest hype people. We cannot expect we show other people how to appreciate us by how we appreciate ourselves. We show other people how to, in our relationship, we show how our partner how to take care of us by how we take care of ourselves. It all starts here. Everything starts here.
Yeah, it's one of those things I would help. I remember at one point I would help people, clients, with their budgets. But meanwhile, I was like running into the negative of my bank account. Like, holy shit, what the fuck? But I'm helping plenty of other people budget, but I don't got time to budget for myself. I'm helping plenty of people get on Medicare, but I'm not working on my own insurance. I'm helping other veterans get their disability compensation, but I'm still at the low end of 40%. And so it's one of those things that, I get. What I'm trying to say is, in healthcare, social work, the law, to an extent, you're putting everybody first, even before yourself, before your families. And I think it's really important with what you said is ultimately having that care for yourself. And be fair to say that will transfer to other folks.
Yeah, we have.
Carly, I appreciate you taking time out. And it's been an honor to have you talk a little bit about what you do, and I really appreciate what you do. And I'm very grateful. And then hopefully we can do a follow-on episode if you'd be interested.
I would love to.
All right. Thanks, Carly.
Appreciate this, Mike. Thank you.
Bye.